from that point on, the therapy went really well because it snapped her out of her self-created, like the intellectual prison she had created for herself. Because at that moment, she had this living experience of being connected to something greater than herself. And the thing which is interesting about that particular synchronicity that I point out in my article is that it was a synchronicity not just for her, but also for Jung. Because you see, the thing with beetles, with scarabs, they're a symbol. Think about with Egypt of transformation of consciousness, yes. Death, rebirth. And so it was like the dream, it was like the waking dream at that point, both in her night dream and in her waking dream, was speaking symbolically. And here was like an expression of like an experience that not only herself, but also for Jung and all of us are going through. That is this transformation of our consciousness, that it was actually getting expressed through the synchronistic phenomena. But also what was interesting, so it wasn't just her synchronicity, but it was also a synchronicity for Jung. But what was also interesting was that he actually played a participatory role. Like if he didn't open up the window and catch the beetle and say what he said, it might not have had such a dramatic effect on her. And so the point I'm getting to is that what I call what's the source of the whole synchronistic phenomena of that particular one, the source of her dream the night before of the golden scarab, of her actually thinking, I'm going to tell Jung the dream, telling Jung the dream at the exact moment in time that she did, having the beetle tap on the window at that exact moment, him having the impulse to open the window, to catch the beetle, to say what he said. What was the source of all of those events was like the deeper dreaming self that was multi-channeled and was actually configuring all those events kind of into the singular expression of a deeper process that was happening both individually in each of them and in the entire field. And that's how mind-blowing synchronicities are.
Yes, indeed. And the question obviously arises, are we, because you alluded to that before, that we are in a way kind of vehicles, if you will, excuse me, of the archetypes, that in a way actually the personal, journey a little bit actually dissolves, maybe not the journey, but the ego at least, that here I am, this is mine, and what have you, the firm, rigid ego, so to speak, that kind of dissolves a little bit. And is it that we actually are the vehicles of something else then? And also, of course, if we I don't know how to put this easily, but it feels like sometimes you actually are playing a part, as Jung described, and as you recall here, that we might say something, for instance, that we didn't expect us to say, but that was actually something that person needed to hear at that particular moment when we said it or whatever, meaning that we're becoming the vehicles of a greater force, if you follow me.
Right, totally. No, what you're describing, I mean, I don't know if I could say it better myself. I mean, that's exactly it, that we are the conduits or the instruments of, like, one could call it God, or Jung calls it the self, to actually become conscious of itself. And that's really an interesting thing to contemplate, because then it's like, wow, we're actually playing an active participatory role in the incarnation of God, that we actually are the vehicle, like you're saying, through which God is incarnating and becoming conscious of him or herself. And that's the deeper mythic archetypal process that we're all participating in. And what I'm pointing at is that that's what's happening 24/7, but it makes all the difference in the world, to the extent that we become conscious of that. So all that I'm talking about is just becoming conscious of what's actually happening, of just having this, like, kind of recognizing the pattern of what's playing out and having the recognition of what is in fact playing out.
Yes.
And what's playing out through us, that we're actually not just in the audience passively watching, but we're actually actively participating in this cosmic drama of incarnation.
Yes. How about things like linear time? I mean, do you think, in your opinion, does it really kind of exist, or does that concept kind of dissolves when we take this kind of approach?
Right. Well, the thing is, you discover that with linear time, it's a construct that's very convenient. I mean, it's really helpful to, I have an appointment today at whatever time. that's great, because then it makes it happen. But, you know, the thing which is interesting when you just unfold the concept of like with like, you know, time and linear time, it has to do with the mythic figure of Kronos, who's like the negative father, who's father time.
Yes.
And interestingly, you know, like so the deeper the mythic process that's unfolding in our world, that's creating all the destruction, is this figure of like the negative father and father time. And so from the symbolic dimension, seen as a dreaming process or as a myth, in a sense we have to slay that negative father, that Kronos, and that's to actually discover that we're synchronos. We're actually in synchronistic time, where time is like this radial, like it's like some sort of like radial kind of, it's like the center is everywhere, and it's always happening in the now, where it's not just unfolding in like a sequential, like, you know, this deterministic causal world that we imagine we live in.
Right.
But just one final thing, what you discover when you, and it's something that we're all continually, you know, to the extent we're awakening, we're snapping out of it. I can talk for myself. I can snap out of it at any moment, but to the extent that I'm not fully awake, then I can maybe fall back to sleep the next moment. But then I can, you know, either get caught in that or have the realization, oh, that, you know, me seemingly falling asleep is itself an expression of like the, you know, that's the form that the awakening is taking in that moment, that seeming subjective experience of feeling like entranced and asleep. So from that point of view, that every moment becomes an expression of our conscious actually waking up. But the one final point I want to make is that what you discover as you deepen the realization of, you know, what we're talking about, that is that we are awakening, is that atemporally in the world outside of time, we've already like awakened. And what's playing out in the medium of like linear time, in a way, it's the medium or the vehicle through which that awakening that's already happened is actualizing itself. And that's really helpful, you know, and it's so much like even in the Bible, Christ says, ye are gods, and scripture cannot be broken. So he was expressing exactly this, that atemporally, outside of time, we've already woken up, and that what's playing out in the seeming like third dimensional time space matrix is just the medium through which that atemporal awakening is making itself real in time.
Yes. Do you think that this is connected? If we talk about symbols, for instance, I'm thinking when you say Kronos, I'm thinking of Saturn and also actually death or the Lord of Time, or even the Lord of Rings. And in a way, I'm seeing or picturing this idea that this is a concept or a construct that is kind of slowly disintegrating. This is something that is falling apart. Our society or even government, in that sense, can be symbolized by this, you know, the Saturnian force, if you will, and that this is something that slowly is dissolving now. And this, I think, is connected with the idea that you're explaining, that if we begin to wake up in the dream or wake up to the realization that this is a dream, then the concept of time actually automatically dissolves. You follow me?
Yeah, totally. No, that's so much it. And then we just find ourselves in the eternal now, you know. And the thing, it's so interesting you talk about with Kronos and with Saturn and all that, because the thing about Saturn and Kronos is that, you know, its form of blessing is to keep us right where we're supposed to be. So it has we can experience it on the subjective kind of experience as feeling bound and feeling really imprisoned, but that's its form of blessing. And so, you know, when we typically, I can talk for myself, because I had, like, my father was an embodiment in a way of an aspect of the negative father. And, you know, for so long I would be cursing what was happening and feeling victimized by it and all that. But the very, you know, experience of feeling bound itself that was the very thing that made me discover my work. So it has a blessing. It has a blessing aspect to it. And the thing I just want to point out, which is really interesting, we talked earlier about like with the evil that's playing out. Well, you know, the antonym to the word, you know, diabolic actually means that, you know, just etymologically it means that which separates. Mm-hmm. Well, the antonym to diabolic is symbolic, that which brings together. And so that's also pointing out that the way to deal with the evil in our world is to develop the awareness that has symbolic awareness. And this is why Jung, one could say his whole life's work was trying to bring back symbolic awareness into our culture, because we had all gotten so disconnected from the dream that was unfolding through us that was speaking symbolically.
Very interesting. Diabolic, I'm thinking, Diablo, the devil, to divide or separate, shatter. Yeah, very interesting. Absolutely. Right. And
when you think about what a symbol is bringing two heterogeneous elements together and combining them in a greater synthesis. And like a perfect example would be like the symbol of Christ. You know, who knows if Christ actually, whether he existed or not, but as a symbol, he has a real potency. Because think about it, he's bringing, you know, being a person, an ordinary, this human being, and being God, two opposites. He's like bring them together in one, in like a higher expression. And that's what a symbol does. You see, it's very different than a sign, which is just expressing something that can be in a way understood and spoken. Like a sign would be like one way, do not enter. Yeah. That says exactly what it needs to say. A symbol is pointing to something greater, but it's not just pointing to it, it's actually an expression of it and the portal into the very something greater that it's an emanation of.
Right, and it's also a relationship with the viewer of the symbol, and they can put their own kind of interpretation on the symbol, and that makes it become alive in a different way. That it becomes something more than just a flat two-dimensional object or something we look upon on a piece of paper. It becomes something alive once we begin to interact with it, if you follow me.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's not something that's just we're in the audience as a passive, you know, person just sort of, you know, seeing something out there that we're not involved with. No, you know, the idea of getting involved in this whole process of whether you call it with awakening or seeing the origin of what's playing out is in the human psyche, is that it's something we have to go over an edge into fully participating. And that's something, you see, that's an edge too for a lot of people, because, you know, people can develop a certain, you know, just comfort, and they don't want to, you know, actually step into the dream. But that's what's actually, you know, seeing this as a dream right now, what the dream is just like thirsting for and is inviting us and actually placing this demand on us is to step into the very, you know, figure, the very, you know, whatever our gift is, whatever our genius is, that's what we're asked to do. And only each one of us individually can do that, you know, but then as more and more of us do that, we can connect with each other like we've been talking about and actually really effect change on more of a collective scale.
Yes. What do you think is the importance of the dream or dreaming right now, so to speak, for the human being, the world we're in? You know, I've heard different ideas that this has to do with the it's very necessary for us to process and sort and analyze kind of what happens in so-called waking life. Do you have a different interpretation or idea of what the dream is to us?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I mean, like a dream, it's helpful. Like, you know, dreams place in a way an ethical, like, responsibility on us. And from that point of view, yeah, they have messages, and it's helpful to analyze and to contemplate it. But that also can be, you know, something that gets in the way, because, you know, it's very easy to analyze stuff and stay in our head, where you know, the thing with the dream is that it's also touching us really in our hearts, and it's helping us to snap out of the cognitive conceptual mind. And so one of the shadow aspects of people who do work with dreams, you know, is to stay just in their mind, you know?
Yes.
And the thing what I'm talking about, you see, when you have the recognition that the dream